I'm speaking to Brad Fuller, but no Andrew Form.
Yeah, Form is in L.A. You know, his wife, they're about to have a baby, and I didn't want him to be down here when the baby came, so I said, I'll take it solo, and I'll keep you apprised of everything that's happening back at home.
Well, let's be honest, I always felt that Andrew Form was the passenger with you two guys.
It's so true, and I'm glad that the word's finally getting out. I do it all myself. He just does what I tell him to do.
It's good to get that on the record, finally.
Let that be your headline. I want to send it right to him.
Look, let's just start off with a big basic question, because you guys are the experts in the remake and sequel business. So with the Turtles movie, how do you strike that very careful balance between giving people more of the same and giving them enough new stuff to keep them from complaining that it's just more of the same?
Well, let's now look. There's nothing we can do to keep them from complaining, because they will. There's always an element of the audience that feels that we have not struck that balance. Though I appreciate you saying that you think we do. But that's it's a hard thing to do, and it's a more hard thing to do, on a Turtle movie than it is on a Friday the 13th or Nightmare on Elm Street. And the reason is, with Turtles, there are so many different source materials that we draw from, being the comic books, the cartoons, and the movies. And the challenging thing is that each audience member brings their Turtle knowledge to the movie, but not every person has the same knowledge. So there are people who come to our movie and will have only read the comics, and they'll have one response, whereas people, I think, especially people who love the cartoon, will love our film, because that tonally I think, matches the cartoon. And then there are people who saw the films and and they're coming to it that way. So it's a challenge to balance those three source materials. And the thing that we do to try and really decipher what the best story is that we keep Kevin Eastman involved in the process of developing it. And Kevin created the Turtles with Peter Laird, and I feel like if he's there and he gives us the thumbs up with our story and the thumbs up with our villains, that we feel that we're, if the creator's telling us that it can work, then we go with it. And if he says, well, I think you're deviating a little far here, and let's pull it back, we do that. So he's kind of a good checks and balances to have.
Now, one thing I found very interesting with the film, apart from the fact that it's so entertaining and so funny and so beautifully crafted, let's put that on the record.
Oh, you're very kind. I appreciate that.
That despite all of the action and all the explosions and the twirling cars and so forth, nobody is actually killed in this movie. Now, this was a deliberate decision that was made. Why?
Well, the thing, when you go about making these movies the first time, I think in the first movie we were just trying to make a Turtle movie, and we weren't sure who our audience was at the end of the day. And was it just going to be nostalgics who were fans who were coming back to see it, or was it going to be kids? And when the movie worked on a couple different levels after the first one, we made a very conscious decision that we wanted this franchise to be a family-friendly franchise. And whereas in the first movie the Foot Clan carry guns, in this movie they carry swords. We really wanted to have a movie where the whole audience could be families if they wanted, and then people who were fans who were older and who enjoyed it growing up, they could still go and have a good time. But we didn't want to eliminate any part of the audience necessarily. And I think also it's a good, and we couldn't have planned this out, but it seems to be working in our favor. It's a good contrast to the other superhero movies that are out right now that seem to have a darker tone and seem more brooding, to have a fun superhero movie. It makes it stand out, I think.
I'm just going to say thank you for saying that, because I was going to ask you about all these superhero movies and how they're getting so self-consciously serious.
Yeah.
Whereas this is a really good superhero film to see because it's just fun to watch.
Well, that was our entire goal. I mean, I say thank you because you're a happy customer. That's what we really wanted to do. I mean, that was all we really wanted to do. I think that the thing that my partners Andrew and Michael and I would sit around and if we could discern it down, or if we could distill it down to just one concept, the concept is we want people to sit down in their seat and smile from the first second to the last. And if we've done that, then we've succeeded.
Yet at the same time, the film does punch the values of family, of brotherhood, the importance of teamwork, and there's even an anti-bullying message in there. Brad, does a film like this really need that stuff?
Well, listen, I think that a film like this certainly needs a theme. And our theme was, be who you are and embrace that. And I think that if you're going to make a movie that a family should go to, there should be something more than just, action and bright colors. And so, we're hoping that, listen, I'm not preachy about it, but we're hoping that the message is something that lands with some people and is meaningful to them.
Now, I might be taking a bit of a gamble here, but one of the stars of the film is the freshly completed Freedom Tower. It's even on one of your posters.
Yep.
And of course, nobody can look at that and not think of 9/11.
Right.
So, in a very friendly way, I'm going to dare you to tell me that there's not a message intended there.
Well, no, and I will take that dare. I think that, what we wanted to do, here's the thing, it was out of response to the first film. I felt like our first film was shot in New York, but you didn't know that you were in New York. You were in alleys, and it didn't really show off the city the way that we had hoped. And so when we decided to make the second film, we figured that there were landmarks that are known worldwide, and we're going to the best of our ability, we're going to utilize those landmarks. That's why, yes, the Freedom Tower is there, and that's why Statue of Liberty is there, and the Chrysler Building. And we worked hard to integrate those into the movie as a response to our inability to do so in the first film.
Am I reading too much into it to say that there is an element of defiance in the film to those who don't like America?
I never thought of it that way because I'm sitting in at the. I'm not. I never thought of that. Perhaps, but that's not how we're not that intellectual over at our company.
No, that's fine. Look, I do have to ask you about Megan Fox, who again puts in a good, sturdy performance, given the fact that she spends most of her time acting against the green screen. Now, having said that, I do have to ask you why you felt the need to sex her up so early in the film, where she changes into a sexy outfit in order to get some information. Doesn't doing that skew your audience towards boys?
Well, listen, we definitely gave that some consideration, and it's interesting that Megan loves that sequence, and to us it shows. Listen, she's a gorgeous creature, and that's good to have in a movie, and she can act well, and that's good to have in a movie. But at the same time, the character makes that choice in order to to complete that mission, and it just to us it just showed that she's smart and she can roll with the punches, and she's able to get the job done. So, that's kind of where that all came from.
Okay, that's fair enough. Now, there's Chinese money in this film. How much did the Chinese film market figure into the making of the movie?
I want to be specific. In terms of the Chinese film market, in the making of the film, there was really no element to it at all. Those deals came into, at least to my knowledge, came into fruition after we had made the film or while we were making the film. But I think as a film producer today, you have to consider your biggest markets, not just China, but there are other, all of your biggest markets, and try and make something that works around the world, as opposed to, I'd say 10 years ago when we were making movies, it was specifically for an American audience, and if we got some additional money from foreign territories, that felt like gravy.
China really is emerging so quickly as a major film market. How important is China going to be to producers like you guys, say in 5 years' time?
Well, if it keeps growing the way it is, it becomes a very important very important for us. I think that, I've gone over there. I've seen what they're doing. The way that the Chinese are building theaters and how beautiful the theaters are and how their population is eager to go to the movies all the time. You cannot ignore how important, that is to the business. But having said that, there's just not I don't know that we would make story changes necessarily in order to satisfy that audience. We want to tell the best story that we can, and hopefully that's a story that works around the world.
Now, what do you guys get out of casting such different actors as Tyler Perry and Laura Linney? Is it the case that the former helps rope in his huge fan base, and the latter gives the film a touch of dramatic credibility?
Well, both, yes. I would say yes to that, and on top of it, the great thing about the franchise is that a lot of people who you could not get for a movie like this are eager to do it because their kids are fans. And, Laura's son was a fan of the movie. I think Tyler was a fan of the first movie. And when you have the ability to cast those people in the roles, you jump at that. the role of Baxter Stockman, although this is an Easter egg, it's probably very boring to most people. We shot a scene in the first movie, and Baxter Stockman is in the scene in the first movie. You won't find it because he's in the background, but he's in the scene there. So we always knew we wanted to have him. And frankly, when we were casting the movie, was right when Gone Girl came out, and his performance in that movie was so great. It was kind of like, well, let's do that. That seems like a fresh idea.
Do these people have to audition?
They don't. Laura Linney and Tyler Perry did not have to audition for their roles. No.
Now, you guys have gone to so much trouble to stage some of the stunts practically.
Yes.
Given that younger audiences are so used to CGI, and because there's so much of it in the film, do you ever worry that stunt sequences that you've gone to a lot of trouble to stage for the cameras might be mistaken by the audience for digital effects?
Well, you know what? On some level, it doesn't matter as long as they're enjoying the movie. However, we get that in there and we wow them. To me, I'm less concerned, with people understanding how we did it. I just want people to go in there and have, a great experience. I mean, the first action sequence was all shot practically. The whole thing on the highway that we shot over 11 nights in Buffalo, New York, and the airplane sequence was something that was all, computer generated. I mean, that didn't, obviously we didn't have two planes flying close to each other with turtles jumping out of them. So, hopefully audiences get the same thrill from both, and maybe they don't think about the fact that one was practical and one was all CGI.
Most of the big visual effects sequences we see in big films these days tend to happen at nighttime, whereas in this film, they happen in broad daylight. This makes them look a lot more vivid and realistic. Are you deliberately reacting against a trend there?
Well, I do want to say that you're a very smart viewer, because I don't know that anyone would draw that conclusion, and I'm kind of glad that you did, and I'll tell you exactly why that happened. In the first film, the climax of the film takes place on the top of a huge building, and we couldn't believe how good the turtles looked in sunlight. I mean, when you're making the movie, you don't think you can execute it. You think, let's always have the turtles at night where we can obscure them with fog and light and stuff like that. But when ILM did such a good job with them in that final sequence, we said, wow, if they can stand up, and in my opinion, they looked better during the day than they did at night. So we said, in this film, let's not hide them. Let's put them, out there in the bright of day and trust that ILM will get us where we need to go.
And finally, just where are you and Andrew Form going with your film partnership? Are you looking to do more dramatic movies?
I wish I had a better answer for you, but the reality is that our company is so small. It's just the three of us, and then we have a couple people working with us. And to make a movie like Out of the Shadows is an all-encompassing job. And unfortunately, our development lagged because we finished this film last week. So we have two other sequels coming out later in this year. We have Purge, Election Year, and then another movie, Ouija. Our sequel to Ouija comes out as well. And beyond that, I have no idea. We have a couple of television series, and hopefully those will continue. But in terms of movies, I really don't know what the future holds for us.